Several weeks ago, I was privileged to be interviewed by Brooke Carlock, and I'll link to her video of that interview at the end of this one. And we spoke about grief and identity. I was inspired to expand upon our ideas because the concept of identity is so central to our grief. I'm Joe McRogers, a grief therapist who is dedicated to doing grief differently. And if you have been around this channel or are a member in my collective, you will know that one of the core questions I'm often asking is, who are you now with this grief in your life? So today, let's explore the concept of identity in grief. When we are grieving, there is the immediate loss that instantly defines who we are. We are bereaved. We have lost someone that we cared for. The grief will be greedy and will need all of you for a time. And this is our first new identity, and it is not at all disputable, and the world sees us as such. And although it feels horrible, the identity fits, and the support and the acknowledgement is available. This is our first primary identity when grieving. Next comes the identity challenges that others don't see, but they upend us so much in private. Needing to learn how to cook for one, or for a family that was 4 but is now 3. How to change the air filter on the furnace, how to mow the lawn, how to manage finances, how to support a daughter through her first menstrual cycle without her mom, how to be an only child after a sibling's death. Do you take off your wedding band after you lose a partner? These are the secondary identities that challenge us. These aren't often seen or acknowledged, and we often struggle with these new forced secondary identities. Personally, I remember feeling some weird and wild comfort in receiving orphans' benefits checks. And while it was such a dramatic and overreaching term, I remember welcoming it in because it seemed to match my dramatic and overreaching grief. I loved and hated every month when that check arrived. It validated me, and yet at the same time, it reminded me why I was even receiving this support. What secondary identity have you needed to adapt to? Gardener, handyman, menstrual expert, cook, banker. Please let us know in the comments below. The third identity that I can speak to is a longer-term one, determined by self-expectation and self-esteem. Often where we get into trouble with our grief is from our self-expectations. I hear all the time, I shouldn't be so stuck, I should be navigating this better. When will I feel stronger? When we feel that we aren't getting our grief right, we can feel like a failure. And this is a blow to our self-esteem when we used to be competent. We need to be very careful not to answer the question, who am I now with this grief in my heart, through this lens of battered self-esteem. And the final identity that I want to speak to is related to loyalty. Sometimes our identity can become entwined in our loyalty to our loved one. Moving out of the deep throes of grief can feel like moving away from our loved one. It feels disloyal. Please let me reassure you that this is not true. Dog paddling your way out of the deep end can actually lead you to a place of honoring your loved one in a more authentic way. I want you to consider that one of the tasks of grief is to move out from your relationship with your grief and back into a different relationship with your loved one. People die, but the love doesn't. So finding ways to connect and honor both them and yourself is a critical identity in our grief. I'll link to the end at this next video, so please understand my humble theory on the states of grief. So tell me, in this discussion of grief and identity, what have I missed? And what felt true for you? Let's normalize the identity hidden in the challenges in grief. And as you find your way with all of the dimensions of the question, who am I now with this grief in my life? I send you kind thoughts, kind words, and a kind heart. Please take good care.